Okay, great. Looks like everything is working. So before we kick things off with Leena, I'm going to start with a quick intro. My name's Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager here at Fairy Godboss. And if you didn't already know, Fairy Godboss is the largest career community for women. Our platform supports women in their careers through free resources like company reviews, job listings, webinars with experts like Leena herself, virtual recruiting events, and a community where users can be honest about their triumphs and failures, either as themselves or anonymously. So before we get started, we will have a Q&A at the end of this webinar. Feel free to leave questions throughout in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You can leave a question anonymously or with your name. It's up to you. And the webinar will also be recorded and sent out as a follow-up. So if you miss anything or you want to revisit the conversation later on, you can definitely do so. So today with me is Leena Patel. Leena is the founder of sandboxtoboardroom.com, author of Raise Your Innovation IQ, and a leading expert on helping rising stars and C-suite executives awaken to and leverage the untapped power in themselves and others to lead impactful organizational change. She draws insights and best practices drawn from being mentored by her grandfather, a direct disciple of Gandhi, as well as 2 decades of experience as a woman-owned and minority-owned business owner. Recognized with the Smart Woman Innovator Award and Woman of Distinction Award for her revolutionary corporate training methodology, Leena and her team have worked with leading organizations in over 16 industries, advised CEOs and senior executives worldwide, delivered over 1,000 seminars, and they've been featured by leading media like NBC, Bloomberg, Fox News, ESPN, and many, many more. Thank you for being here today, Leena. Over to you.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for being here. Welcome to Find Your Voice, How to Drive Meaningful Change in the Workplace. And in this training, I'm going to be giving you tools, ideas, strategies that you as a leader, as an aspiring leader, as a change maker, as an innovator can embrace that will help you to use your voice in a way that will drive meaningful change. And in particular, we're going to work with you to enable you to be more strategic in growing your current business, in winning new business, and in capturing greater market share. So before we dive in, I do have one request. If you have any questions as I'm speaking, if you wouldn't mind just making a note of them, holding off till the end. So Sam said we will have time for Q&A at the end. So that will enable me to just keep flow. I've got a ton of content to share with you. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be terrific. So let's get started. So here's this quote by the Center of Creative Leadership, and they say that rapid organizational change is one of the biggest leadership development challenges facing businesses in coming years. And this means that your leadership team and you, no matter where you are in the organizational hierarchy, need to be equipped with an understanding of what is changing, what we are doing that is holding us back, and what we can do about it. So I'm going to give you in this webinar 3 very specific approaches to enable you to use your voice. But first, I'm going to give you a kind of overview of the current situation to give you some context around what we are up against. So consider this. Consider the direction our world is going in. The leaders in industry are leaving behind them this massive wake of nothing. Many are in the crest of their careers, and within the next 5 years or the next decade, they're going to be looking for their exit strategy. So who does that leave on the bench? Us. There is a gap, and we have to fill that gap. We are going to be the new leaders, and we've got to be prepared to step into their shoes, to take business and technology and education and politics forwards. So the good news is there is an ocean of opportunity. We're living at an incredibly exciting time. The workplace and the world is changing at this unprecedented pace. It is spurring innovations in corporate culture. It is spurring innovations in new product lines that are speaking to demographics that have long been ignored. And so the growth potential is huge for those that are paying attention and they're not threatened by the tidal wave. So the focus right now needs to be and is moving towards more and more putting the focus on people, helping us, helping you, helping them, helping people in the workforce thrive. And I believe that is the fastest path to ensuring that your organization is ready for the future of work. So this time is right for us to be contributing in a very meaningful way. And this is what Wendy Woods from the Boston Consulting Group has to say. She says, smart, committed people, they are our most precious and powerful resource. And many of the innovations that people have created recently enable even more people to contribute in even more substantial ways. That's a significant part of why I'm so optimistic about the future. So this is our time to contribute. And if for any reason, if you're one of those people right now, and I'm guessing if you know, that's not you because you wouldn't be here otherwise, but if you're one of those people that believe that we need to leave it up to the big guns to finally wake up, smell the roses, make things magical and perfect for us. If you're one of those people that believe that we deserve raises and rewards and recognition without applying ourselves to learn new ideas, to learn new ways of thinking and learn new ways of showing up in the world, then this training is not for you. Okay, but if you're one of those people who are like, you know, give me the material, give me the content, give me the strategies, I'm ready to make things better, I'm ready to take a stance, I'm ready to change, then you are in the right place. So here are the key takeaways I want you to walk away with, and I'm going to give you during this training webinar. Number one, the 7 key trends that are taking place in the workplace today. I'm going to teach you the understanding, to understand the difference between what I call the old power and the new power. And then you're also going to learn the 7 keys to awakening this new power. And then you're going to learn 3 approaches to using your voice to drive meaningful change. So let's start with the first key trend, the tech revolution. Clearly, it is all around us, and the potential for growth is huge. It's obviously going to lead to business growth. The potential for new product innovation, for streamlining processes and innovating that is obviously there. And currently 40% of CEOs say that innovation is one of their top 3 priorities today. So if you can tap into that and somehow use your voice to add to that conversation, you are onto something. And I want to take a moment because I think it's really important for us to recognize how, how capable women are as innovators. We're most likely to be adversely affected by the shift towards this technologically advanced labor market. So a lot of traditional female-orientated jobs, administrative roles and so on are being wiped out by automation, and the traditionally male roles like STEM, science, technology, education and maths are becoming more and more prominent. So our ability to be creative and to innovate is going to contribute hugely to this change in the workforce. The second key change is the move towards purpose-driven organizations. Today's workforce and the young generations that are following have a very different standard for what they should live by, and that's what we should be living by. Millennials are cause-driven. They care very deeply about making a difference, whether it's in the community or on the global stage. So organizations that are not making this a key priority right now are really missing out. The key change, the third key change is the shift towards lifelong growth. And what I mean by that is traditionally people get hired in the workplace because of their qualifications, because of their experience. And organizations are now recognizing that education and experience are no longer going to cut it. About 30% of the jobs that we're going to be doing in the next 5 years don't exist yet. So companies are recognizing the value of investing and training their people and teaching them how to think, how to problem solve so that they can be future ready. The fourth key change is the multi-generational workforce. So I spoke at a conference last week, a tech conference, and with IT leaders, and it was interesting that 2 of the senior executives of the company, of leading tech companies, said to me separately, without even discussing this with each other, they said that this was their biggest challenge for them, is actually helping the different generations find a common language and communicate with each other. The fifth key change is shifting of the organizational hierarchy. And so what I mean by this is there's a shift happening from the individual to the collective power. And I'm going to be talking about this in more detail shortly. The 6th key change is rethinking the pipeline. So there's a lot of groups that are experiencing discrimination right now, but organizations are very, very conscious that they need to be doing whatever they can to embrace these underrepresented groups. This diversity of perspective has to be occurring in the C-suite and at board level. It is critical in order for organizations to stay relevant and drive innovation. So they're really really rethinking how they're getting more women into leadership, for example, how they're getting more diverse representation and training them all the way from mid-level, from manager, director, VP, and all the way up. And then the final key change is reimagining office culture, because nothing can be done, no innovation, no change can happen unless the people feel safe enough to do so, unless an organization is focusing on creating a culture of innovation, a culture of collaboration, and a culture of inclusion. So these are just some of the really key areas that we can affect meaningful change. We're not limited by any of the above by any means, but these are really sort of the key trends that are happening in the workplace. So I'd like to hear from you for just a moment. If you can type in the box areas where you would like to see meaningful change. It could be one of these that I've shared, or it could be something else that you're personally dealing with. Just give me some ideas of what you feel like where the most important changes need to be happening. Go ahead. Anyone there? Rethinking the Pipeline, multi-generational workforce. Great. 4 and 7. Okay, okay, great. So great. So let's move on and see where we go. So this is really interesting. So I want to document, I want to share how far we've actually come in the last 60 years. And I came across this last week and I thought it was funny and a little bit scary. So I thought I'd share this with you. So this is from a magazine in 1958, and the publisher asked 16 people to brainstorm strategies lonely women could use to get men to pay attention to them. And here are a few of my favorites. So you can see there's that article, I've circled it in the left corner, 129 ways to get a husband. And here are some of my favorites. Stumble when you walk into a room that he's in. Don't take a job in a company run largely by women. Let it be known in your office that you have a button box and will sew on bachelor's loose buttons. Stand in a corner and cry softly. Chances are good that he'll come over to find out what's wrong. So some of these tips are rather questionable, not very empowering at all. Let's look at how far we've come in 60 years. Fast forwarding to 2018, this happened. Employees at Google in New York City, Silicon Valley, Seattle, Hyderabad, London, Berlin, Zurich, and other cities around the world protested how the tech giant handled the sexual harassment cases against 2 male executives. They were basically awarded $105 million in exit packages, and that was it. So obviously, employees responded with outrage and protests. They certainly didn't respond by offering to sew buttons on these men's shirts. Go figure. Also in 2018, a young student, Emma Gonzales, bravely addressed a gun control rally in Florida days after a gunman entered a school, killed 17 people, and injured many more. And this is just one of those images that shows support for Emma, who has become quite an icon of the anti-gun violence movement when her speech went viral. And I share these examples because these people, employees of Google, these young students, they're not in leadership roles, they're not in positions of power, yet still they manage to use their collective voice to drive change. And I feel that this really demonstrates that we need to today broaden our definition of innovation in today's economy. So here's my new definition. Driving change and new innovation is not limited to supporting your organization in creating new products or services or improving upon existing ones. It must include innovating on the standards, the rules, the modes of behavior we once perceived as normal in the workplace, but that no longer serve us as individuals, as leaders, as businesses, and as a human race. And I also want to talk about what is meaningful change as opposed to any old change, plain old change. That meaningful change is today connected to a greater purpose. Its goal is to improve the life and career of individuals, to help an organization better realize its mission, and to positively impact the world at large. But it goes way beyond this. 3 questions that you really want to ask yourself if you're if you're looking at approaching change in a meaningful way, is how is it going to impact the individual? How is it going to impact the business, the organization, and how is it going to impact the world? Okay, so quick feedback from you so that I can have a sense of where you're at. How confident, where would you rank your ability to use your voice to affect meaningful change today? Where would you rank your confidence? And let's use a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 being not at all confident, you don't know how to use your voice, you don't feel like it's going to make a difference, and 10 being you're crushing it. Right, so just to get a little bit of sense of who's on the webinar, where are we? We've got some 8s, 6s, 7.5s, a 3, 4, 5, 3. So we've got ranges from 3s to 8s. Suddenly it seems like there's a lot of 5s and 6s, and then 3, 5s. So we've got a spectrum here. I know how to use my voice, but finding where I have the knowledge, but finding where to help others. Great. So we've gotten some, and a 1 here. Thank you. So thank you for your honesty. We've got people across the spectrum here, which is phenomenal. So I'm going to give, hopefully I'm going to empower you with some real hands-on strategies. And for those of you that feel like you're in the sort of 7 and 8s, you're going to also walk away with some nuggets that will really serve you today. So I'm going to share my story just to give you a little bit of context of my experience around this entire topic. And there we go. So that's my father. And growing up, I had a very traditional Indian Asian parent. He wanted me to become a doctor or a lawyer. And for him, getting a good degree was a stepping stone to attracting a good husband from a good family with a good job that would take care of me. So I knew that wasn't my path from a very early age. And I rebelled against fitting into that box for years. My grandfather, on the other hand, very different, a political activist who was a businessman, a change maker. He always encouraged me to stand up for what I believed in, even if it meant challenging the status quo. And having these 2 examples of people in my life that have taken on non-traditional roles successfully definitely made it easy for me. I gravitated towards my grandfather's message. I didn't let the traditional notions of women in business and leadership define or confine me, but I also had those naysayers in my life that told me that things weren't possible, that we had to sort of, be bound by tradition. And so for me, it was a very clear choice. It was about choosing which voice to listen to. My grandfather was a direct disciple of Gandhi, a little bit of background. So his principle of nonviolence, truth-telling was ingrained in me and my family from a very, very early age. And he taught me 2 things growing up. He said, 1, 2 questions he asked me. He said, where am I not facing the truth about what I want to create in my world? And number 2, where am I not communicating this to others? So I really took these questions to heart. I lived my life in this way, my childhood in this way. And I had one very particular experience growing up that really caused me to reassess how I did this. So at the age of 16, I became a Buddhist. I was a young women's leader in the organization. I led them, I guided them through career choices, life choices. I really wanted to give our generation a stronger voice. And as I was doing this, tension between me and my father grew. He couldn't understand why I wanted to align myself with another faith. And I say here, the most dangerous word in the English language. And at the age of 16, here's what I realized what that word was. It's the word should. My mind was raging with shoulds. My father should understand how important this is to me. He should let me follow my own path. He should let me have my own set of beliefs, even if they're different from his own. And it was paralyzing for me. It was actually very, very difficult for me. So I spoke to my mentor, and the guidance he gave actually shocked me. He said to me, I thought he was going to validate my decision. It was like like inwardly triumphing that he's going to say, well, of course, you should do what you want if somebody's not supporting you and not letting you live life on your terms. And I thought he was going to give me that validation. But instead, he said to me, Leena, be a good daughter. And that blew me away. It taught me that I didn't have to get angry. I didn't have to convince my father that I was right and he was wrong. I didn't even need to change him. I just needed to understand where he was coming from, and that he was actually coming from a place of love. He couldn't articulate it, but he was coming from a place of love. He wanted to know that I was safe, that I wasn't being threatened or joining a cult that was perhaps going to, you know, take me down the wrong direction. So he was protecting me in his own way, but he didn't know how to express it. So I learned from this interaction that it's not enough to communicate your truth. You've got to do it with kindness. You've got to do it with nonviolence. I realized that I was 100% responsible for my own experience and for the outcome that I created. And a very powerful question that I started to ask myself out of this experience is, how am I responsible for creating this? The price that I paid was that, for not recognizing this previously, was that I wasn't able to change my experience. But when I started to take personal responsibility for how I was relating and connecting with my father, everything changed in our relationship. Abraham Lincoln said, "Put your feet in the right place, then stand firm." And for me, at the age of 16, and actually still to this day, sometimes we need help with knowing where to put our feet and how to stay firm when we're faced with a lot of challenges. And our dream right now is that, you know, we want women to really have a seat at the table, frankly. And our biggest hindrance right now is that we are justifying that, and we should not have to be justifying it. We have to stop. We've had this conversation in the last couple of years where executives have asked us to put together a business case to justify women in leadership or to justify a more diverse workforce. And I think it's starting to get a little bit insane, and we have to stop placating that absurd notion that we deserve that seat. We do need that. We do deserve that seat. We don't have to justify it. 4% of women and the Fortune 500 are CEOs right now. Enough of the justification. Here's some good news, because we need reminders of actually how great, how awesome we are. So I want to tell you, in case you forgot, that you are good for business. You, and I mean women here, and even if there's men here, like this, you know, this is, but I want to say this to the women on the webinar very specifically. You're skilled at reducing costs. You know how to manage money, you're efficient, you're able to multitask, you have agility and flexibility, you're great at managing conflict and change, you're intuitive, you have a high emotional IQ, emotional intelligence, you're great at relationship building, you've got great networks, so you can help organizations gain access to bigger markets, and you have this amazing capacity to think and to innovate and to be creative, which is going to take you to the next level in your journey. So you are good for business. More good news, you're not walking alone. The new power, as I define it, over the last few decades, people in various circles have called it speaking truth to power. But this is the new power. Because of the rise of social media and the influence we have as a collective to lead change, this power is shifting from the individual and it's swiftly moving into the hands of the masses. So I look at it kind of visually. I imagine it as a pyramid. All power is lying in the hands of a few at the top, and the new power, the power is moving into the hands of the masses. And I think the big mistake that we make is we think, as women, as individuals, we think we are individual waves, and we're not. We're the ocean. We're the entire ocean. The problem I see is that many people don't feel equipped to step into this level of conscious leadership today. The workplace isn't training us, education isn't preparing us. And I do believe that there is this light inside all of us that has the ability to transform the quality of our lives and inspire greatness in others. And we're covering it up with one of the lamest excuses on the planet. And it probably sounds something like this. I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm a woman, I'm colored, I can't do that, I don't have the authority, I'm just starting out, I'm just doing my job, I can't make a decision that's senior, our CEO would never allow it. And these are big lies that we tell ourselves, and we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. So we really want to put an end to that and disempowering voice in our head. So we're not waiting passively on the sidelines, but we're really upgrading our mental software. Okay, so 7 strategies for awakening the new power. Number 1 is to prioritize the right thing versus the senseless thing. This is our own moral consciousness speaking. So this is your standard for what you believe to be acceptable. Define for yourself what victory means to you, because it's different for each of us. Does it mean being number 1 and winning at all costs, even if you've annihilated the competition? Does it mean a win-win? what classifies as victory, and you prioritize that. Number 2, stop turning a blind eye. This takes courage. Stop turning a blind eye to the problems in the workplace because you are not directly affected by them, because you think change is beyond your reach. Skepticism is just an excuse for not helping and speaking up for a cause you believe in. So stand for something. Number 3, show up, stand up, speak up despite your fear. You are going to experience fear, but can you act anyway? Because it's the right thing to do. Trust that the universe is conspiring in your favor. 4, dare to believe your voice and opinion matters. Strip away the layers of pretenses, rationalization, minimization, omission that you might be using as a matter of convenience in order to avoid confronting what needs to be brought out into the open. Number 5, stand against the action, not the person. Are you able to separate the action from the person? It's really hard to implement this one because we often want to go into blame and judgment. So I'm going to share a strategy in just a moment around how to get around that. Number 6, let go of the need for approval from others. Women, we are so guilty of this. We often turn to others for advice more frequently than we listen inwards. But talking to others does not absolve us of the responsibility of listening to our own truth. And then finally, act even when you think no one is looking, or you think the result is of no consequence. When you don't, you draw others to you that are, that same fear state. So this struggle becomes a cycle. It becomes challenging for everyone. So take bold action. So 3 approaches I'm going to share with you to use your voice to drive meaningful change. Explore, align, inspire. Let's dive in. So these are the 3 areas that I want you to explore. Number 1, I want you to explore what's holding you back. Number 2, explore where are you the strongest. And number 3, explore how you can get your point across most effectively. So when you're exploring what's holding you back, here's the number 1 challenge that my female clients face. And it's this inability to internalize their accomplishments. They lack self-confidence in their abilities. They don't value themselves highly enough. They don't think they're ready. Every excuse in the book, so we're not ready. And it's like they're waiting for permission. Somebody to give them a slip and say, it's okay for you to be powerful. It's okay for you to be strong. It's okay for you to advance and want big, bold dreams for yourself. So I encourage you to adjust your self-perception by really kind of making an accurate assessment of what your strengths are. I'll share a bit more about that in just a moment. I want you to get feedback from other people around you, from your peers, from your team members, from leaders, to get this additional input. And number 3, I want you to practice silent empathy. And that really means for you to just be kind to yourself, to check in at that inner language that is happening, and cut yourself some slack, because you're not always going to get it right. You're not going to get it perfect. It's going to be very messy. And just empathize with yourself and just check in and make sure that you're not crushing yourself in the process and in the journey of stepping into your power and being bolder and taking greater risks. The second part of exploring where you are the strongest. So I use this in continuum here. The ICT is the intuitive creative thinker. And those amongst you that can identify with this, you're creative naturally. You have a lot of quick start energy. You think on your feet. You have a lot of visionary ideas, bold ideas. You're thinking ahead into the future around what hasn't been created or what hasn't been accomplished before. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got what I call the IDRTs, the intuitive data risk management. So these are the people that love data, that love statistics, that love to research things, that are very risk averse, and they want to know that this pathway has been walked before, it's been done successfully before, and they want to have a blueprint to minimize their risk. So all of us here on this webinar fall somewhere on this spectrum. And what I want to encourage you to recognize is, 1, where do you fall? If you're high in one and sort of medium or low in the other. But 2, also, because we're looking at activating collective power, I want you to look at strengths that your team member has. if you've got team members that have those opposing energies from you, perhaps you're a visionary thinker, you're a great ideas person, but you don't have great follow through, your execution isn't that great, then gather those people around you who have that opposite skill set, because now you can start to pool your resources, you can leverage your team's strengths to be able to drive change forward. And then the third part of explore is, how do you get our point across in the most effective way and without making the other person wrong? So this is a tool from nonviolent communication. And our goal is to do 4 things when we're communicating with others. So I'll walk you through them right now. The first is to make observations versus judgments. It's very easy to go into sort of judgment mode. We're taught to blame, we're taught to find fault, we're taught to criticize, we're taught to punish. We have to change our thinking and communicate with others in a way that connects more deeply with them. So instead of saying, John made me angry, we can say, well, when John said X, I felt this because my need for respect wasn't being met. So we're not blaming the other person, we're simply observing what they said, what they did, without passing judgment, and really talking about how we feel. So we're talking about our feelings versus making evaluations, right? We're not talking about being bullied. We're talking about perhaps our feelings around that, which is perhaps being scared or feeling pressured. So we direct everything internally and make it about how we feel versus evaluating another person and passing judgment. We talk about our needs versus strategy. What is it that we're needing? Are we needing respect? Are we needing clarity? Are we needing understanding? Are we needing safety? Versus a strategy is fixing the problem, coming up with a solution, looking for the end goal. And that can be very threatening to a lot of people. If you go into strategy mode right away, all of a sudden, someone, the person we're talking to, their back will be put up, right? But if we're talking about our needs and what we need from something, nobody can dismiss that, because that's us, that's what we own, that's what we're needing, and we're communicating from that place of what is alive in us. And then the fourth shift in your communication pattern is making a request versus a demand. And in the workplace, we are so conditioned to do this. Give me that report by Wednesday at 4:00. Show up to this meeting. You're traveling on Wednesday. It's sort of that's the language and that's the pattern. But when we're looking to drive change and we make demands on people, again, they feel as if they've got no other option. And so all of a sudden they get it goes into confrontational mode. But if we shift to making a request, everything changes because they feel like they have the option to say no. So we've all experienced those naysayers that shut us down. And when you come across them, here's this magic phrase that I use, I'm going to share with you. And it's simply this: would you be willing to test this out for X days, weeks, months, however long, that aligns with your idea, for however long, as an experiment, and see what happens? Would you be willing to test this out as an experiment? Those words are magical. I use them all the time. The very fact that you're asking someone if they're willing requests their buy-in. And most people, if you ask them if they're willing to do something, would you test this out? Would you give it a go? They're more likely to be open to it versus you making a very strong demand. So use this phrase. It works. It's really helpful. The second approach to using your voice to drive change, to drive meaningful change, is aligning. And this is about aligning. So you've aligned yourself with your team players, identified your strengths, your collective strengths. Now you have to align with your business's goals, identify all the players, and your goal is to create consensus amongst all the stakeholders by finding common ground. So here's a matrix that I've put together, and you can see sort of ease of implementation, how easy or difficult is something versus how much money is a company going to make or not make, right, based on implementing this idea, because that's what they care about. So let's use this as a frame of reference to help you to build that consensus internally. So if you look at the bottom left quadrant, there you'll be in the hard to implement area. low ROI for the company, so pretty much the worst space to be in. If you're going to work with your team, you can get them to each put sort of sticky notes in each of the quadrants based on what they think and how they feel. If you look at the bottom right, it's hard to implement, but there's going to be a higher ROI, and the more to the right you are on this quadrant, the higher the ROI. Top left quadrant, it's easy to implement, but the ROI is very low, so it's good for small milestones, good for stepping stone endeavors. Then you look to the top right, and this is obviously the best case scenario. It's easy to implement for the organization. It's going to deliver a high ROI. So you might end up with something that looks like this with people all over the map. It tells you where they're at. It tells you the progress you need to make to move your idea further along the football field towards the end zone, if you're a football fan. So use this matrix. I'm going to give you a downloadable, printable version of this consensus matrix for you to use with your teams. So hang on till the end. I'll tell you exactly how you can access this free resource. The third approach to using your voice to drive meaningful change is inspiring. What are you doing to demonstrate your voice? Do people know what you stand for? What are you doing every day or on a weekly basis, on a regular basis, to inspire and rally others to action? And one of my favorite ways of doing this is to create a really strong personal brand. And you can do this no matter where you are in the organization. And I'm going to give you some ideas. 3 ideas I'm going to give you. One is, I want you to understand you're not just an employee. You're not just an employee. I'm going to give you 3 ways. 1, you're a top connector and you're a networker. This is your skill as a woman. So I want you to use this to your advantage. I want you to be evangelical in sharing your story, your struggles, your successes, inspiring others, particularly other women. It gives them a boost of confidence. It affirms that they're on the right track also. It shows them what's possible. So use your connection and your connecting skills and your networking skills to share more of who you are and to share your humanity and to show your struggles and your journey. The second way that you can shine and inspire others is through being a brand ambassador. Brand ambassador. And this is about championing your company culture. Hopefully it's a positive one, and if it's not, there's an opportunity there for growth. Championing what's good about your company culture, and then championing the causes that you support. So use your social media platforms, your blogs, LinkedIn, platforms like Fairy Godboss to champion success stories, innovations, the thought leadership that's happening within your organization. It sends a very clear message to organizations that this is what you care about. And trust me, they are gathering this data, they are listening. So be proactive in sharing. And then the second area that you can really shine as a brand ambassador is to champion other women that are doing great things in your organization or in the world at large. I think that as women, we do not champion each other and support each other enough. Given the struggles and the challenges that we face in work, let's make a deliberate investment in really helping our female colleagues to be successful. Celebrate all successes, not just your own, not just a few people, but everyone's. Celebrate them, even if they're really small and minute. It doesn't have to be the big earth-shattering ones that only get shared. The small little leapfrogs are really valuable as well. And then the third way that you can shine is through thought leadership. You can really amplify your voice and drive change as a thought leader. And this is an advanced strategy. Your goal is to develop your thought leadership, and and how do you do this? This is not just now resharing posts. This is not simply championing other people that are doing great things. It's you sharing your insights. It's you sharing your perspectives, and then making sure that the organization is doing their part, or you're doing your part, or your network is doing their part to align those innovation efforts back to you. Because if you don't take the credit for what you've done, if you don't speak up for that, then somebody else will. I've heard it so many times, when women are sitting at meetings, they pipe up, they share their perspective, and then a man will walk away, take the credit for the idea and implement it. and get promoted. I've seen it so many times. So let's not fall into that trap. Let's give ourselves credit where credit is due. And a lot of women actually will say to me, well, Leena, it is really egotistical, I feel, to kind of be patting ourselves on the back and saying how awesome we are. We're just not used to doing that. There's so much resistance amongst women to stand up and shout about, you know, our accomplishments. We're not great at doing that. But I do believe that the more images, the more stories of female innovators and change makers that are seen in the media, that are seen in the public eye, the more it benefits all of us, the more quickly this becomes normal. And the better the chance we have of encouraging more women to believe that not only is it possible, it's the norm. So these are my three approaches: explore, align, and inspire, to help you to use your voice, amplify your voice, and drive meaningful change. I want to ask you in the chat box to share the number one thing that you've learned that you are going to go away and implement or do differently after this webinar. So go ahead and share with me the number one thing that you've learned or that you're going to do differently in this webinar. We're going to go for Q&A, so hold your questions, but share with me what you've learned, so I can hear from you what your biggest takeaway was, what really landed for you. To use the magic phrase, love that. It's so powerful to say, would you be willing to use this as an experiment, to test this as an experiment? A stronger brand ambassador, great. Magic phrase. I like the idea of phasing. The opportunity to try. Great, thank you for sharing. Thank you, great. So I did promise you that I was going to give you access to the downloadable PDF. Here is the address, sandboxtoboardroom.com/matrix. You don't have to opt in, you don't have to sign in, log in, or any of that. That's my gift to you, a free resource, so that you can build consensus within your teams. You can find where people are in your team, where they fit on the map, and then figure out your strategy from there. So download that. And then one final resource I want to share with you. This topic, Awaken the New Power, is a chapter that I profiled in my new book, Raise Your Innovation IQ, 21 Ways to Think Differently During Times of Change. So of course, this is one idea, one strategy, one approach. For more ideas and insights, an additional 20 ideas and insights, then feel free to order this copy. It's available on Amazon. There's just a ton of case studies and ideas and actionable steps that you can take to support you on your journey. So with that said, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Website again, it was sandboxtoboardroom.com matrix. You guys are going to get an email with all these links. So if you've missed anything, just look out in your inbox for this, and then you'll also have access to this webinar, so you can come back and watch it again if there's areas that you've missed, and you know, and so on. So we're going to get that information to you. So let's open up to Q&A.
Yeah, so I'm just jumping in here. Thank you, Leena. That was a really great presentation. And as Leena said, we will be including every link that she included in her presentation in a follow-up email along with the recording. So if you miss anything, you can revisit it and check out all those links that she had in there. So feel free, if you have any questions, you can leave them both in the chat and in the Q&A feature. If you have any questions throughout, anything that popped up now. But I guess I want to start off with one question. You mentioned the idea of, you know, other people kind of taking credit for your ideas. If somebody does take credit for my idea, what should I do?
So, okay, so one, it's a great question. So it really depends on the context of how that person has taken credit. So if, for example, so this happened. This is a recent client story where they were in a meeting. So this woman was in a meeting, and she was in a room, a couple of other women there, and obviously a lot of men. It was a strategy meeting, and she piped up with an idea. And now, granted, I know this woman. She's slightly on the sort of timid, on the quiet side. She had this fantastic idea. Chances are she didn't say it in a very sort of strong, bold way. So what happened was that one of the other men in the room literally like sort of 2 minutes later, reiterated the idea as if she had never said the idea at all. And everyone sort of jumped in and sort of supported him as if it was his idea and he took the credit for it. And she felt really, really bad. And rightly so. Rightly so. And so we talked about it afterwards. And there's a couple of things that we do. Is one is we want to speak up with kind of authority. When we speak up, let's not be timid and bold. Two, I think we need to, that's when women can really champion each other. When we're in that scenario, when a woman is speaking up, and especially if we know it's difficult for them, let's not be afraid to chime in and say, yes, Stephanie, that was a really great idea. Yes, Julia, I believe that's, that let's support each other more verbally and give us that, because we need that more than men. We're not used to making broad generalizations, but we're not used to it. It's a challenge to speak up and to speak up with authority. So one is to ask for that support. And then two, if that's already happened, somebody's already taken your idea, then, I wouldn't be afraid to go up to that person in a non-confrontational way, a non-violent way, meaning like we don't necessarily want to just accuse them of taking our idea, but let's at least open the conversation and find out what they were thinking. Hey John, I noticed that you expressed the idea that I shared in a meeting, just a few minutes earlier. I'm wondering if my idea prompted a thought in you, what triggered it, ask for more clarity around why he did that, right? So open the conversation to understanding why that person did that. Maybe they weren't aware of it. Maybe they heard you, but didn't feel like it kind of got washed aside and there was an opportunity for them. But making it really clear that that's not cool. But understand, where are you coming from? And if it was a mistake, then it can be course corrected. And if that person did it intentionally, and also just be willing to approach that and say, I did say that within the group, and I would really welcome if you could make sure that I'm getting the credit for that idea, or you're letting people know that this is something that I came up with. And if, and as you're taking it to team member or senior management, I'm happy to chime in with some ideas that I've already gathered and some research and some data that I already have on this idea to support us so that we can collectively win. And it's reframing things as we. It's standing in your power and making sure that they realize you're not a pushover, but not doing it in a confrontational, threatening way.
That's a really great advice. Yeah, for sure. I think it also, I love the idea or, the example you gave of other coworkers chiming in to kind of redirect the conversation and remind them that whose original idea it was. But unfortunately, you don't always get those situations. So it's important to advocate for yourself too.
Yeah.
Okay, another private question just came in. This person said, you talked about thought leadership. Do you have any tips to how to develop myself as a thought leader?
Yes, I do. So one is to obviously be aware of what's going on at all levels in the organization. A lot of us in the workplace, we're so focused on, our particular business unit and our role and our responsibilities that we're somehow disconnected with what the big goals of the organization are, what C-suite level goals are. That's not our job, that's not our responsibility. I'm not senior enough. But when you have that understanding of what the company's agenda is and the direction they want to move in, you can start to kind of position yourself in that by making recommendations and ideas that align with their vision. So that's one thing. And then being aware of what's going on in your industry, what's going on, the trends that I mentioned. If there's anything in there that really spoke to you, just be aware of what's happening in the media. What are people talking about? And I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I see a lot of people simply, reposting and resharing. So developing your thought leadership is not just now reposting. That's easy, and it's great. It raises awareness, but there's nothing that says thought leader as when you're when you're writing 2 or 3 sentences about what you think that article means. All right. So you're giving your perspective. Now you are educating your audience on why they should read that article. Maybe it's a really long, 5-page document, and nobody has the time to dig through that. Certainly not when you get senior, you're so busy, nobody's going to read it. But if you want to repost it, then one really cool thing to do is just be like to highlight the top 3 things or the top 5 things that really struck you and put that in the description. To just share the articles and here are the top 3 things that I thought were really important for you to pay attention to, and then share the link. So now people look into you as somebody who is gathering information, giving them like the highlights, the bullet points, so they don't have to wade through documents to do that. That's one thing. The other thing is you want to look for areas that you've got a unique perspective. I talked about storytelling. There are things happening in the media. And if there's something that really aligns with your personal value, I'll give you something that came up just yesterday in my social media feed. And it was a conversation around the cosmetic companies using doing animal testing, when for the last 20 or 30 years, they've been adamant that they don't test on animals, but because there's a requirement in China, they've sort of been, hoodwinking their people, frankly, and telling people that, so they've been lying to their people. And that made me that was very, outrageous for me. You're lying to people who are believing, you're telling them one story and you're saying something else. So when I saw this article, it was just posted yesterday, 2 days ago, on one of the major media sites. I immediately sort of just shared, like, this is why I think this is outrageous, that 7 years later, these companies are still exhibiting the same behavior. And people got into a big conversation about it as to what it means and integrity and so on. But it started simply because I gave my input on something that I cared about. I care that companies are being in integrity with what they believe in. They're not saying one thing and doing another. So I shared that. I shared my personal story, my personal belief around that, and it created this entire dialogue. So that's just one example of making something that's in the media very personal, and then turning it into a teaching point. So it's not a rant. It's not oh my God, this company is like lame. This person, is doing it appalling and abysmal. It's not complaint mode. It's empowering for your readers. You're sharing the takeaway and maybe even suggesting one thing that you think they could do to improve upon it.
Yeah, instead of I like that, not complaining, making it more of a learning moment. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. It looks like we have one last question. So if anybody has a question, get it in now. But this person, anonymous, said, I'm trying to create some positive change in my organization, but my manager won't listen to me. Who should I go to next, or what should my next steps be?
So the way that you would approach this, it depends a little bit on the culture within your organization. Mm-hmm. If you've got very much an organization that is chain of command, they use that term in the military, where it's just like you can only speak to the person, that's your leader, your manager. You can't go, you don't have any connection with, it's not open door policy. I'm assuming that that's the case. That's sort of the worst case scenario. If you do have an open door policy, there are other strategies. But let's just assume that your only option is to go to the manager. So Sam, just read the sentence for me one more time.
The first or the second? They just said, I can redo it. So I am trying to create some positive change in my organization, but my manager won't listen to me. Who should I go to, or what should my next steps be?
Okay. So my manager won't listen to me. So that tells me that there is a communication breakdown here. So I encourage you to go back to this segment where we talked about nonviolent communication. And this is going to require you to do a little bit of inner work now and look at your language choices. When you're talking to your manager, how are you presenting yourself? Meaning, if you're talking to her about all the things that you want to change, all the things that are going wrong, it feels very confrontational to people, and it's not going to get you very far, unfortunately. But if you can use that model of observation, feeling, lead, request, meaning like just be more kind of like talk about your experience, your personal experience, request a meeting. So you're not catching her when she's like running out the office on her way to doing 10 important things. request some time with her and say, look, I really want to just, share some of the things that are going on for me right now. When can we set aside 30 minutes? And get that time on the calendar so she's prepared and she's giving you her full attention. And then talk about what you're observing. No judgments, no, like he's doing that, she's doing that, she should be doing this. I'm not saying we're doing this at all. I'm saying this sort of for the benefit of everybody, because we go into this default place, which is really hurtful to us achieving what we want. What are specific instances you can point to? What observations can you make? This specific incident happened. This specific thing was being said that you can use, so that you're literally, it's factual. It's not emotional. You're pointing to very factual things that have happened. And then how does that make you feel? Nobody can take away how you feel, right? You're simply talking about, do you feel disrespected? Do you feel unheard? Do you feel unsafe? Like whatever that specific incident was, what needs of yours are not being met? Right? If you have a specific need for connection, for collaboration, for understanding, identify what that specific need, like how does it make you feel when you picture those incidents in your head? What need of yours is not being met when you think about how you feel, and then communicate that need. You're really talking from a very personal thing. You're not talking about strategy. You're not telling them what they need to do. You're not telling them how to do their job. You're talking about your needs. And then the magic phrase, would you be willing, asking for some kind of shift, would you be willing to do X? Would you be willing to test this out? Make a very specific request, and that's something that's very tangible that she can do, right? So that's one thing. And I would start there, because typically when we're looking for change, high-level change in an organization, when we break it down, it's because it makes us feel a certain way. We're feeling uncomfortable. We're feeling that we're not being heard. We're feeling that, we're not being trusted. We don't feel safe. It comes down to that. So rather than focusing on the strategy, the change, focus on how you feel. And then the change will start to happen, because as you start to implement things that can make you feel safe again, for example, and it could be, maybe creating a women's support group, or a business resource group, or tapping into something like that. As you start to create things that can address that need that you have that is not being met, the change will start to happen. But that's one idea. And I hope that was helpful for you. Whoever asked this question, I know it's a very vague response, because I don't know your specific situation. I hope that response served you.
Yeah, that was great. It looks like we're hitting time right now. So I guess before I wrap things up, Leena, do you have any final words for our attendees today?
Yes, I do. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to leave you with this one thought, if I may, and it's a quote from Gandhi, my grandfather's mentor and inspiration for me. And he said, go back again for that. He said, be stubborn for us, not for you. Stubborn because you have considered the maximum number of people. Wow, that just disappeared. Okay. Stubborn because you've considered the maximum number of people who will benefit, and you wish to serve them by solidly banging the drum for what you believe. Right? That's what he said. It's really about being stubborn because you wish to serve people. That was the essence of his quote. So it takes just one candle to light a room, and it takes one candle to light 1,000 more. So I want you to go out and bang the drum. Thank you, everyone. It has been an honor to spend this time with you. Let's do this. Be bold, take risks, make a difference. This is our time to use our voice to drive meaningful change.
Thank you so much, Leena, and thank you everybody for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.